Thomasini Hella Osborne,
Present.
Daryl Proctor,
Here.
Mark Randolph,
Present.
Joyce Dare. Speaker, you have 15 present, 1 absent.
15 present, 1 absent constitutes a quorum. Any business conducted this evening will be valid. Next item on the agenda, speakers report. Speakers report for January 24, 2023 on the Wednesday, January 3. I had a morning meeting with the housing and an AT&T commissions meeting, communications meeting with the MCNIT department, and a meeting with Muskogee Media over the radio building possibility. On Thursday, the 4th, master plan update meeting with the chief, Light Horse Commission work session. Friday, the 5th, the staff in the Mound Building attended the TANF 15-year celebration event. Monday, January 9, we attended the Oklahoma governor's inauguration. Tuesday was LNC committee meeting virtually and a Georgia Historical Society virtual meeting. On Wednesday through Friday was intertribal at River Spirit, attended the golf tournament, governance committee meetings. There was a low water dam press conference and the signing at Riverwalk on Thursday. Friday was the ITC general session. Tuesday, January 17, Tribal Nations Relations meeting with the Tulsa City Council and the NCAI ED board meeting. 118 BF&J committee meeting, and I attended the American Indian Chamber of Commerce evening dinner in Okmulgee. And this just a few minutes ago attended HEW LNC joint committee meeting. That concludes my speaker's report. Next item on the agenda, second speaker's report.
Thank you, Speaker. Yes, I attended the Light Horse Commission virtual Zoom meeting by Zoom, and I also attended the Okemah Indian Community meeting this month. That's my report. Thank you.
Moto, second speaker. On to the ex officio reports. Ex officio reports, MNGE LLC, Representative Randall Hicks.
Hello, Speaker. MNGE met on January 4th, 2023 at River Spirit Casino. Meeting was called to order at 6 p.m. by Chairman Chris Ray. Reports were given by CEO Pat Cross, COO Andy Langston, and MNGE attorney Jan Tiger. MNGE also met on January the 18th, 2023. I did not attend the meeting due to an internal affairs meeting scheduled that same evening. Financials have been emailed to the full council, emailed on January 17, 2023. The next scheduled meeting dates for MNGE are February 1st, 2023 and February 15th, 2023. Both meetings are scheduled at 6 p.m. at the River Spirit Casino. That's the end of my report, Speaker.
Outstanding, sir. Moto. Next item on the agenda, MNBE Board Representative Sandra Gold.
Thank you, Speaker. MNB met last year, December 29th. They continue their growth due to newly awarded contracts, and their total distribution to the nation right now is right at 179,000. It's a conservative estimate due to the billing statements that haven't come in for the rest of the month. And at this time, they are at a critical stage for space because of the number of employees that they have increased, and so has their health risk. So, they're still looking for office space. The next meeting is this Thursday, January 26th at 5 p.m. And that completes my report.
Moto, Representative Golding, for the minutes and the meeting report, Representative Joyce Deere was able to get on the meeting at 5:32 p.m. So that's for our minutes. Next item on ex officio reports, College of Muskogee Nation Board of Regents, Representative Anna Marshall.
Moto, Speaker. The College of the Muskogee Nation Board of Regents met on Monday, January the 9th, 2023. Some of the up-to-dates is that this is probably their largest enrollment. They have a total of 262 students. And they are also in the process of, they're finishing up on the National Resources and Cultural Arts Building with light poles, fixtures, and just the finishing touches. And then on the update on the exhibit hall, I believe they laid the foundation, and the anticipated completion is December of 2023. And they also have, they're in their second phase of their Muskogee, the College of Muskogee Nation marketing plan. They finished up the letterheads, the signature lines, future TV and radio ads for their recruiting purposes. And they're in their second phase of their brochures. They have completed their strategic planning, will be finished up in 2023. And they're also working on the Muskogee language revitalization. And a part of that is the Master Apprentice program. And they have 20 fluent speakers to be projected out of that. And the Emory, they're working with Emory University out of Georgia, and with an Emory grant. And so the next meeting is on Wednesday, February the 1st, 2023. And that concludes my report.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Representative Marshall. Muskogee Lone Fund Representative Mark Randolph.
Hello, Speaker. I have no report.
Mano, Representative Randolph. Last item on the ex officio reports, One Fire Board Representative Patrick Freeman Jr.
Mado, Speaker. One Fire met last week and discussed tenants and property improvement and property related issues. Further discussion was about the pending FY22 audit, which should be initiated in March. That concludes my report.
Mano, Representative Freeman. That concludes the ex officio reports. On to the next item on the agenda, unfinished business. We have NCA 23-008, a law of the Muskogee Creek Nation repealing NCA 21-084, a law of the Muskogee Creek Nation repealing MCNCA Title 16, Chapter 4, and creating new law in a new Title 50 entitled Light Horse Police, and authorizing an appropriation for the Light Horse Commission as amended by NCA 21-135. Previously numbered NCA 22-136, which was postponed at the October 29, 2022 quarterly session. This item will be added on the quarterly session agenda in numerical order. On to committee reports and announcements. Health, Education, and Welfare Chairperson, Representative Joe Spear.
Hello, Speaker. I apologize for being late. The Health, Education, and Welfare Committee met on Wednesday, January the 11th, 2023 at 2:00 p.m. And out of the committee, the following legislation was approved or came out approved. TR 23-009, TR 23-010, 011, 012, NCA 23-002, 003, 004, 005, and 006. We have no other items for consideration. The next scheduled committee date is February the 8th at 2 p.m. Other announcements, I would like to remind the council that the Challenge Bowl will start the first Friday in February, and they are still looking for volunteers. I went to the volunteer training last Friday, and they have some, but they need more. So if you can volunteer for this Challenge Bowl, which is something that the council, National Council has sponsored. It began because of the National Council. You can contact, oh man, I can't remember her name. Her name just left me. But anyway, she works in the housing office. Melinda Deerenwater. She's heading up the volunteer list. So if you can volunteer, and I understand that Representative Galen Cloud will be the MC throughout the whole Challenge Bowl. So I would hope we would have more participants in the Challenge Bowl. Thank you, Mado.
Mado Representative Deere, Land Natural Resource and Cultural Preservation, Chairman Representative Darrell Proctor.
Thank you, Speaker. January 10th, 2023, LNC committee met and added a committee with a due pass. We had TR 23-001, 002, 003, 004, 005, and 006, 007, and 008, and also NCA 23-001. We had a joint committee this evening, HEW LNC, and that committee with the due pass was TR 23-019 and NCA 23-009. I'd like to respectfully ask to be put on the agenda for Saturday's quarterly session. And no other items for consideration. Next scheduled committee date would be February 14th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. No other announcements. Thank you, Speaker.
Mado Representative Proctor, those agenda items will be added to the quarterly session in numerical order. Mado Business, Finance, and Justice Chairperson, Representative Thomasine Yehola Osborne.
Speaker, the Business, Finance, and Justice Committee met on Thursday, January 19th, 2023 at 3 p.m. And the following came out of committee with a due pass. TR 23-013, 014, 015, 016, 017, and 018, and also NCA 23-007. We have no items for consideration at this time. The next scheduled committee date is February 16th, 2023 at 3 p.m. And we have no other announcements. Thank you, Speaker.
Yes, ma'am. Mado Representative Yehola Osborne. That concludes our agenda, the committee reports and announcements. On to other business. Other business, we have a demonstration and a discussion from the Muskogee language video game. Dr. Monty Randall. Can you hear me, sir?
Good day, everyone.
Hello, sir.
How are you doing?
We are doing great, sir. The floor is yours.
All right. I just wanted to just talk about and answer any questions on the video game, on the legislation that's coming up. So we had shared a video demonstration. If everyone was able to see that, I'm available to answer any questions on that.
All right, thank you, Dr. Randall. National Council, do we have any questions for Dr. Randall about the video game?
Mr. Speaker, I have a question.
Yes, Representative Gouge.
If this passes full council, when is the anticipated date it'll be completed?
It's got 12 months for about 12 months for the development time on it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir. Any other questions, comments?
This is Representative Marshall. I have a
Yes.
question.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Randall, I have a question, and I know that we had a discussion about it in HEW committee. My question is I was told that we have to spend this ARPA funds, and I'm not sure when we have to have it spent, but they were saying that that this was the priority. Were there other priorities in addition to the language video game?
We have a lot of priorities. We're working on a master apprentice, on a curriculum redesign, on a hymnal and Bible app. There's a lot of opportunity, I would say. But I would say with a 12-month lead time, I would put this at a priority.
Since this is listed as a priority, you talked about the master apprentice and some of the other pieces that the college is doing. Is those programs, are they being paid out of this $7 million, or is the 3.7 just for the video game?
That's just for the video game. So
Okay.
the Master Apprentice is coming from that Emory
Grant.
grant
Mhm.
that they receive from the Mellon Foundation. So that's about 2.4 million that we're basically getting about half of that to run that Master Apprentice program.
Okay. Well, I support the language. I support young people and anything that helps them be engaged, particularly with the language piece. But 3.7 million is a lot of money. I mean, to me, that's just astronomical. Maybe if it was 1 million, it would be easier for my mind anyway, financial mind, to grasp it. But for 3.7 million for a video game that can be used as an app, and you said that it would be available to every citizen. Is that what's raising the cost, is because it's available to all the citizens, or how does that work?
Well, I mean, I said that as my opinion, that whenever the question was asked, if it would be available, and that's to be decided. I would say my opinion is that it should be available to everyone. Now, so we're already, we're in, at the time, 1%, and that was last year during the when this came up for the language symposium, whenever we were discussing the video game project, and we wanted to see a demo. And so, and at the time we were just talking about it, and so we wanted to see what were the capabilities of it. So we put in 1%. The video game developers developed 1% of the application of the game development, and we paid 1% of that at $22,000. Now that was going to be the price, at 100%, that would have been $2.2 million. And so what has raised the price to the 3.7 was all of the added features. So being able to, as Representative Harjo had asked, can people play against each other online, and connect with each other and communicate with each other. And so that was added. And so that drove up the cost across all of the platforms. So as an app on your phone, tablet, and then across all the other platforms, PlayStation, Xbox, all of those, and that drove up the cost. And then there's also a virtual reality component in there as well. So that drove up the cost as well too. Basically, we told them, give us everything on the quote, and so that's what the 3.7 is for.
Okay, well, that helps my understanding. Mado, Dr. Randall.
Thank you, Representative Marshall. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Going once.
Speaker.
Yes, sir. Representative Hicks.
Just one question. Monty, can you explain the game to me a little bit better? Besides, I watched a little bit of the video that I'd seen, and all it shows is a person walking around and going to objects and it's saying a name. Is there more to it than just that?
Oh yeah, that's 1% of the game. That's what we paid for to see the demo. And so at the symposium, as that video plays towards the end, you kind of see that that sort of that sandbox type of environment. And when I say sandbox, I'm talking about like a tabletop demonstration, if you can, and that's what we used to call those types of, environments, was the sandbox, where you're manipulating different objects. And so, in the video game, that kind of that last portion of it is where they're really showing the capabilities, and that's what that 1% of that game development was. And so the participants at the symposium, the kids, I mean, there were some youth there that they were playing in that practice environment of it. And so there's going to be all kinds of features in there, you know, and so that video that you saw, like I said, I mean, that's 1% of what the capabilities of the game is going to be, you know. And so the game, you know, there has to be some entertainment value on it. So you're playing that first person as that robot, and you know, going just like any other video game, you know, completing challenges, figuring out different puzzles, different objectives. And so, you know, not only is it the gameplay that you're figuring out, it's all, you know, it'll be in the Muskogee language. So you're figuring out the gameplay, but you're also figuring out the language. You're learning the language as well.
My next question is, you know, I know you say there's some kids at this symposium that played this game and all, but have we had more than just a few kids that were at this symposium try out this game to see if this is even going to be something that, you know, relates to the kids, that the kids will like? I mean, because spending 3.7 million on something and then finding out the kids don't even care about it, that's a big spin for the tribe.
Yeah, that's you know, at a 1% development, you know, that's all the information I can give you. That's fortunately for me, that's your job to make that decision.
Okay, thank you, Speaker.
Yes. Any other comments, questions? Representatives?
Speaker.
Dr. Randall, just real quick, Dr. Randall, were there any adults or elders that sampled this game with you all by chance, sir?
A few. I was busy on the symposium day.
Yeah, right. All right. But Representative Gold.
So there were some.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, Speaker, thank you. I just wanted to make a comment, and then I guess I have a question, but I don't know how many people remember the program. It was a reading program, and it was very similar to the game application that Dr. Randall is talking about, and it was called Myon, but it was to increase reading skills of all our children, because by the time the kids get to the third grade, they don't have that reading level. They hold them back. And so I recall that they wanted to increase language books with Muskogee language. And every time they added, there was more money. And so I guess that's my concern, that the more that you keep saying that you're going to add this and you're going to add this, it's going to come out to be more money than we can afford. And so I think that's why they said they weren't going to fund the program anymore. So a lot of the children that were just getting on it, you know, they got their laptops and they got their earphones, and we implemented it at Willika actually. And about that time they said, well, it just keeps, every time we ask you, you know, you said it was okay and we weren't going to add any more money, but now it's more money. And so they just didn't put any more money into it. So consequently, the program went down the tubes, and I don't know what happened to education, who owns it. And I guess that comes to my question. Once they've already done this and they start using our language, you say we own that, Dr. Randall, but what in this keeps them from copying it and selling it to someone else?
I believe it's in that contract that was negotiated as well, or that the Attorney General has been able to review. And you know, it's all the indigenous knowledge that we own, that you know, that is ours. So we retain that, you know, that indigenous knowledge that's in there, the language, the culture.
And when you say we own that, do you mean the college owns it or the Muskogee Creek Nation?
The Muskogee Nation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Randall.
Thank you, Representative Golden. Final call. Any questions, comments? All righty, well, we will discuss and vote on this on Saturday. Dr. Randall, thank you so much for everything you do, sir. We greatly appreciate it. Before we end this part of the discussion, Chief Hill, Second Chief Beaver, are you on? Would you like to say any comments about the video game legislation? Okay, very well.
No, Speaker, I'm on.
Okay, very well, sir.
Yeah, this
Floor
is
is
the
yours.
second chief. Yes, Mado. You know, one of the things that we had talked about was just the whenever we talk about language, you know, we can't. It centers around what can we do and what options do we have. And so, you know, we can't save our language by just going at it by one avenue. We have to have a variety of avenues to save our language. That's why we've created the language committee. That's why we had the language symposium to get input. And this game is just one avenue of getting the language introduced. I'm just talking about introduced to our younger generation specifically. It's for all, anybody can play the game, but if you go into our child development centers, you know, there's at least one classroom that has like a smart board or has a computer in there, and those kids are playing games on those smart boards or on those computers, and they're not playing a language game. They're not learning our language on those computer games. So to me, this is just another avenue where we have our children in our child development centers playing our game, learning our language. And so this is just one avenue to get them introduced to the language, whereas they might never, ever hear it anywhere else. And so this is not a end all to save our language. This is just one aspect that we have to have in order to get our language out there, to introduce our children to our language, because the vast majority has never heard our language. And so this is just that one step that we're making. And hey, believe me, it's not lost on us that it's a lot of money, but you know, how much is our language worth? That would be my question. How much would you be willing to spend to save our language? So Mado, Speaker.
Outstanding. Thank you, Second Chief. Well said. All right, this concludes this portion. One more, yes.
Hey, just real quick,
Yes, sir, Chief. Yes, sir.
Just kind of echo what Dr. Randall and Second Chief had mentioned. When Dr. Randall first showed me this, he showed me the intro to this game, and I showed two of my grandson, and they was wanting to know when it was going to come out. I mean, they enjoyed it watching. They learned a little bit, you know, just a few words what Dr. Randall had showed us. And as Second Chief said, what kind of price value do we put on the language? With the language symposium, what Dr. Randall has done, but we discussed this when he was Secretary of Education. We have to do something. This is just one of them. They're having the language classes now, and this is just something they come home to do. You know, if they come home, get on a computer and start playing the game, at least it's in their mind to keep on learning. So it's just, again, can't say enough what Dr. Randall has done, and we totally support this. And I understand it's a lot of money, but how much can we put a price tag on the language? That was one of the other questions. It's losing it now, but thank you, Speaker.
Outstanding. Thank you, Chief. We greatly appreciate you, Second Chief. Dr. Randall, again, thank you for all your efforts. This concludes this matter. So, Mado, we're going to move on. Right now, we have an update and discussion with the election board. Ms. Sarah, are you on the line?
Yes, sir, I am.
Yes, ma'am. The floor is yours.
All right. First, I just want to say, Mado, for your time with everyone today. The election board has been hard at work for many months in reviewing the existing Title 19 and just ensuring that it is up to date and reflects what should be current practice in terms of relevance within, involving technology and the way that elections are conducted. I want to acknowledge that all but one of our board members are also online, and so I do welcome them to chime in as we move through these proposed changes. As we began to do a second review of the changes to make sure that everything we did made sense and it all flowed well together in terms of all of the Title 19, we realized that this discussion would probably take some time with the council, and we prioritized 3 of the areas that we felt like needed to be addressed prior to this election cycle. So we settled on one aspect of really chapter 2, and then chapter 10 and chapter 15. So chapter 2 is in regards to the election board. Chapter 10, I believe, is on the absentee process, and then chapter 15 is on campaign finance code. And so we have a PowerPoint that I'd like to share my screen. I apologize because I noticed many of you council representatives are on your cell phone. So hopefully you'll be able to zoom in with your fingers on your screen, and you'll be able to read what we're about to share with you. I will not read it word for word, but we'll just kind of hit the highlights there. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now, and we'll start this presentation here, if I can see. Go here. Okay. All right. So some of the major comments, and if you all have questions, please stop me again, other board members, if you want to chime in, also just jump right in. So some of the common changes throughout these 3 chapters include changing masculine pronouns he, him to gender neutral pronouns they, them. Use of election workers to describe all workers rather than the separation of precinct workers and other categories that had been included in there. We kind of made consistent the verbiage around the envelopes and how those are described and used throughout the text. And so that is in regards to the outer vote envelope that has the signature, the secrecy envelope, which is what they place their ballot in to maintain the confidentiality, and then the ballot itself. So you'll see some of those words, changed. And then we had some reorganization of subsections to keep relevant information together. I think perhaps with some of the amendments, things were tacked on in areas that could be their own subsection. And then we created new subsections when necessary. So we'll just go in order of the code, which is in no way a reflection of like our priorities. It's just all of them. So the first happens to be chapter 2 on the election board and the language around compensation. So the current language includes $500 per meeting and $450 per day for election days. We're proposing that just be made a flat $500 rate across the board. There's also some clarity in our proposed language around the compensation for other business that's conducted. Oftentimes our business is more than just a meeting. As you all know, sometimes the elections are contested. We are required to report to the court for those meetings and hearings, and that is official election board business. When the board is not, when the complete board is not needed, then we will be mindful of who needs to be present and who's available. So when not all 5 board members are needed at a meeting or to conduct business, such as appearing before the court, then we may need to reduce the number of board members that are present to reduce those amounts that will be compensated for. 2 of our board members live outside the reservation. more than 60 miles away. So we did feel it was important, given that oftentimes elections involve very late nights in processing those ballots, that we're able to provide compensation for board members to reduce any risk that they may be traveling, driving while, very tired after those long days. We want to make sure that everyone stays safe. And so with early voting also, the number of days that the election board is required to work has also increased. And so those are some of the reasons that we are proposing this particular change. And I will just move right along if you guys don't stop me. So chapter 10, you can see the comparison between the current and proposed subsections, and we'll dig right into each one of those. So chapter 10 is on absentee voting and how those ballots are issued and processed in the election. And so in terms of chapter 10, really the overview is just simplifying and updating the language, providing clarity on absentee voting process from the request of ballots through the post-election and certification process. We want to make sure that we address the priority mailing of those ballots out to our citizens who requested those absentee ballots. And then we want to really clarify the documentation of the chain of custody for the ballots, the transportation of ballot boxes, and the security, both during the election and after the election for storage. So in section 101, we really felt like early in-person voting, section B, should actually would actually fit better under chapter 7, and we originally proposed that change. However, since we are not reviewing all of chapter 7, we do propose that we go ahead and leave it in chapter 10, but that we add it to the end of this chapter as its own section, as it doesn't really relate to the authorization of absentee ballots. So I think that's pretty much common sense there of those two things. And so once we get to a review of chapter 7, we could propose that change at that time. This is the current language and proposed language for the request for the absentee ballots. And this is proposed section 103. So we really just simplified the language here. It still requires a signature, it still requires a written request, and still requires that request to be made within 24 days in advance of the election. That makes sure that the election board office has time to issue those ballots to those individuals. Section 104, transmittal of ballot to voter. The suggested change increases the time frame from when ballots can be mailed. Yes.
Speaker, I have a question.
Yes,
Sarah.
yes, ma'am.
Sarah, on that section you just went over, 103, you said that it says on my copy, absentee ballots shall be mailed not more than 20 days prior. You said 24. Are you changing that, or is that the way it's supposed to be? Mine says 20 days, but you said 24.
Well, I don't have the original document pulled up of the code, but I can make a note of that if that is a change, unless one of the other board members has it in front of them. I have my notes in this PowerPoint on my computer right now, so.
Yeah, well, I have my copy in front of me, so that's why I just wanted to ask.
Okay.
This is Milton.
Yes, sir. The floor is yours.
Yes, the current language for 10-102 states that ballots request, and that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the request, not the actual ballot itself. So it's true that ballots. It's true that ballots can't be mailed out. Do what?
He's on section 103.
So this is proposed
No,
section 103. It was
yeah,
actually the original section 102.
Yeah, so if you see what she's showing here is a side-by-side comparison of what the current language of the law says and what section it would fall underneath if the proposed amendments were to pass. So you are correct in saying that ballots, yeah. So
Yeah, I thought she was on the next section. I see that now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Sorry, I
Speaker.
should have, yeah, clarified that.
Thank you, Speaker.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yes, so you will see some discrepancy in the subsection numbers between what the current and the proposed are due to moving some of those sections around. Thank you, Nelson. All right, moving on to the transmitted of the ballot to voter. Again, simplified language. Increases the time frame between when ballots can be mailed in advance of the election date. So this is where we increased the increased it to the 30 days prior to the election. As you know, we've experienced some slow U.S. Postal Service delivery times, and so we want to be sure that they have that extra time to receive and complete their ballot.
Great.
We did have some complaints that it was a short turnaround time on those absentee ballots, which is why another reason the priority mailing of those ballots is important, and then giving ourselves a few more days. Materials to accompany the absentee ballot. This is what I discussed in terms of clarifying the different envelopes that are used in this process, which may sound very simple, but it's very important as we move into creating policies and procedures around how these are processed, so that we can be very clear about how that occurs when the absentee votes are counted. Next section, return of ballots. Just want to make sure that this is clear and easy for any of our citizens to understand what the instructions are for them in order for their ballot to be counted. So this again incorporates some of that language around the envelopes that we use in the process.
Speaker,
Representative Hicks, yes.
I do have a question. I know in the last election, we had some kind of back and forth on the whole when ballots could be counted and everything else and all, but are y'all giving extra days for these ballots to be counted, you know, at the cutoff time? Because, you know, last time, I don't know how many ballots come in after the cutoff was done, but that was because of the mail being slow. So are we gonna change that to give leeway for these ballots to come in case the mail's running slow or not? Because I know last time it said if it was postmarked before a certain date, then they were good. But even whenever by my understanding, that what I'd heard was even though they were postmarked by that date and they still come in late, they were still not counted by the election board.
Thank you, Representative Hicks, for your question. If I may go ahead and answer and respond.
Yes, go for it.
Okay, all right. So if you'll see, the current language does say that it must be returned to the Okmulgee Post Office by 11 a.m. on Election Day. So we are not proposing any changes to that. The previous change in the previous subsection that allows us more time, so that, you know, increasing the time that we can mail those ballots to the voters will allow them more time to get them returned. In addition, we already have approved in this year's budget to use priority mailing envelopes to speed up that delivery process, and that is to mail them to the voter as well as return them to us, to the post office. I think if we discuss, you know, taking ballots that aren't received by the post office by that 11 a.m. deadline on Election Day, that we run the risk of individuals maybe postponing mailing their ballots, and we will then postpone the certification of the election results for an undefined amount of time, right? So unfortunately, I think sometimes these deadlines are necessary, and that allows us, and I've worked the election prior to coming onto the board. And we stay until every ballot that is received at 11 a.m. is counted. And so as long as it gets back to the post office by that time frame, then their ballot will be counted. So I think if we're proactive in ensuring that the voters understand that it's clearly printed, that they will hopefully won't waste any time in terms of filling that ballot out once they get it and returning it just as soon as they can. I hope that.
Well, I appreciate that answer, but let's say someone mails it out 2 weeks before time, and because the post office has lost it or whatever happens in between then, and then Okmulgee doesn't get it in the right amount of time, are we going to still count that ballot or not? Because that's plenty of time for it to land back in Okmulgee.
Mm-hmm. And according to the code, it does have to be received, and I know that these are things that are out of our hands, right, Representative Hicks? We can't control the post office and how they handle the mail. We do hope that priority mailing envelope is a larger envelope. You know, it's 8.5 by 11, I believe, size, and it does deliver. I believe that the delivery time is 1 to 3 days, and that should be guaranteed according to the post office. So I think that's all that's within our control.
Okay, appreciate it.
Great.
Question? Speaker?
Yes, Representative Golden.
Yes, Ms. Barnett, one of the things that some people don't realize is for those people who live in rural areas and small towns, if I mail something in Waleeka, it doesn't go to Okmulgee for the next day. It goes to Oklahoma City or Tulsa, then it comes back to Okmulgee.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like you said, the post office are the people who are responsible for getting that to Okmulgee Post Office by 11. So I just wonder if there was any consideration made that you could that the time frame could be like Mr. Representative Hicks said, if they were postmarked by a certain day, no later than Wednesday before, even though they didn't get there by 11 a.m., they should be counted on that following Monday.
But what if they don't arrive by Monday? What if they arrive 3 weeks later? We won't ever know what is floating out there and when we've received the last ballot to be able to certify our election results. So that's it's just a.
Yeah, I like you said, 3 days. And if they were postmarked by 3 days and it was on that Wednesday before the election day, and then it didn't get there by 11 a.m., but it did get there the following Monday, and you can count those. I just wondered if you considered that. That's all. I'm just saying.
Sure. And it was part of our discussion. I appreciate the concern. We do, it's our job to make sure that our citizens' voices are heard in this process. And I think if we think about the timeline, if we're mailing out a ballot 30 days before the election, and it gets to them within 3 days, which is 27 days before the election, and then they know that they need 3 days at least to get that back to us. So that gives them 24 days within that period to complete that ballot and get it to their post office. So that's more than 3 weeks time to consider. Hopefully they've thought about who they want to vote for. But I think the matter is a sense of urgency upon the voter to get that to the post office, get it completed as soon as they can. As soon as they receive it, fill it out and get it back to us so that it can be counted by that or received by that 11 a.m. deadline.
Thank you, ma'am.
If any of the other board members would like to chime in, then go ahead. All right. So this section was 106, and I think that's right. So in section 103, I'll go back to that. This language was clarified so that basically anyone could requesting a ballot, sorry. The requesting of ballots, anyone can request an absentee ballot if they know that they will not be there in person. We do hope that those that live within the jurisdiction will avoid any issues with the post office and will go ahead and vote in person at their precinct or voting location. And so when we revise that language, removing the incapacitation requirement, then this section becomes null and void, section 106. So we don't really, it's not really necessary. In terms of 107, the changes that we propose limit the emergency request due to hospitalization to within the reservation boundaries. It also incorporates the language for the different envelopes for consistency. It provides a little bit more detail of the role of Light Horse personnel for transmitting or transporting the election board members who deliver that ballot to the emergency voter. It's really not feasible for us to extend that offer beyond the reservation boundaries, as all of those ballots have to be returned and counted on election day. And so we didn't want to overextend ourselves as 5 board members working the election, and we need to be present with the absentee workers as well as escorting those emergency ballots to the registered voter. We removed section C in that. This is a continuation of the previous slide. And yeah, we removed section C because we won't need reimbursement, as Light Horse will be providing that transportation for us. Any questions on subsection, proposed section 107? Section 108 is in regards to handling and retrieval of the returned absentee ballot. Again, we try to use a step-by-step process to outline who has custody of the ballot boxes, how they're transported, and who's doing that. Number 1, delivery of boxes to collect mailed ballots with proper documentation of chain of custody. And then number 2 allows for the initial processing of the absentee ballots to begin while early voting is taking place. This speeds up that counting process on Saturday or on the election day, and it allows us to share preliminary results earlier. So we don't open, we're not proposing that we actually count any ballots prior to election day, but rather we remove that outer envelope, we verify signatures, we do some of that preliminary work while early voting is occurring, so that on election day, our workers can immediately get to work when they arrive at the location to count absentee ballots. They can immediately begin processing those that were received early on, again, to make sure that we're using our time wisely during the election day and that we're able to hopefully share some of those preliminary results earlier on. I know in my experience, I've been there until midnight. I've heard stories of others being there much later that evening. So we do think that's important. 109, examination of signatures. We extended the dates to allow for the processing of ballots to occur at the same time as early voting. So it goes from 3 days to 5 days, as you can see there. The proposed language maintains the chain of custody during transport and when and how the ballots will be stored after they're picked up from the post office. So we want the Light Horse to keep those safe and secure. Those boxes are locked, but still secure, even more so within the Light Horse facilities. And it does maintain that the 11 a.m. is the final deadline for us to go pick up any ballots from the post office. This was the section on absentee workers. The changes allow for a shorter timeline. We need to make sure that for the presentation of the names for the absentee workers, there is a requirement to be an absentee worker. Several, they cannot be related, of course, to any of the candidates. So we needed to make sure that we knew who those candidates were prior to requesting specific absentee workers to work the election to ensure there's no conflict of interest. In this proposed language, we also ask that if the National Council does not approve of the names as presented to them, that they are able to replace those candidates so that we can move forward with the number of workers that we need in order to process the absentee votes. Counting procedures, again, we tried to make this very clear, very straightforward, as there were, I believe, lots of questions in regard to this area in the last election. We again want to make sure that the chain of custody is well documented and outlined in that process. We do want to make sure that we're using that consistent language regarding each of the envelopes and that everybody understands what we're doing and how it works. There's also proposed language on the hand counting process, which follows the same process as the electronic counting process, other than feeding the ballots through the machine. So not many changes in that next section. Let's see. So our certified results, section 111, the only change is the reference to section 110 in regards to the counting procedures. And section 113, it was added to the first section 101. So we felt like this language actually belonged earlier on in the chapter. So it was just a matter of moving it to the front. Similar to this language was moved to section 105 as noted there. List of absentee voters. We're proposing to remove the requirement to post all absentee ballot requests. We didn't feel like why this was necessary and thought it might violate the privacy of the voter. And that we do understand that the list simply needs to be retained and is available for record keeping, but to post it in a public facing, view, we didn't think that that would be necessary. Retention of the outer envelope and absentee ballots, again, using that common language and making sure that only the relevant items need to be maintained in storage for that 6 months following the election. In the past, the current language, it could be interpreted that even the trash, the signature tabs that we pull off there, the priority mailing envelopes, those are involved in casting a ballot, but we don't necessarily need to keep those things. But what we do need to keep are those outer envelopes with the signature and, of course, the ballots themselves to make sure that if we need to do a recount or verify anything, that those are available. Section 113, the original language or current language says that we should immediately notify the voter of the rejection of their ballot. I can tell you from my experience as a worker that in the past, I know the board has done everything possible to make sure that we count every valid vote that is ballot that is cast. But there are times when it's very clear that that signature does not match any signature that we have on file. For us to expect that the manager of the election board immediately notify that voter is a little bit unrealistic, especially since these are absentee ballots. The expectation is that they can't vote in person, so they would be unable to get to a voting location and cast a new ballot if their signature didn't match. And so we just changed that, proposing that we change that language to say that they'll be notified as soon as practical, but not necessarily immediately as soon as that ballot is rejected. This is where we added that language that is originally in section 101. Since that was really unrelated to that particular subsection title. We felt it needed to be on its own. Again, this was a subsection we originally moved to chapter 7, but since we're not currently proposing that we do an amendment to chapter 7, we wanted to make sure that early in-person voting was still authorized within the code. So I believe that concludes chapter 10. Are there any other questions in regards to chapter 10?
Any questions, council representatives? Outstanding, please proceed.
All right, I'll go through this quickly. Let's see, on this is the campaign finance code. We are just proposing that we strike the language of create organization to implement the provisions of the campaign finance code, as we believe that's the duty of the board to implement the campaign finance code by our charge. And so that is the only change recommended for subsection 101. 102, we remove the declaration of candidacy. If you look at that current definition, it's any public announcement that they are intend to run for office. It's not feasible to expect that we are able to monitor anyone and everyone's social media accounts, their websites, news media announcements, to be able to monitor that. And so it's really unfair if we were to notice that one individual made such announcement on their social media page, one day, and then someone else did the same day, but we only saw one of those. And so, that the ability to enforce is just unrealistic for us as a board. And so we propose that we remove that declaration of candidacy, but to be a candidate, that is a person who has officially declared their candidacy by filing the respective paperwork with the election board. This next section, powers and responsibilities. Let's see. Don't believe there is any change there. Section 104, disclosure statement, change to finance report. Maybe that was the change here. Nope. Okay, I don't know what I missed there. Campaign finance report is the same thing as the disclosure statement. So that is a common change you'll see throughout. We're proposing under section A that the $100 donation, that threshold by which any candidate needs to report their donor, equals $100, not just over $100. And then here is the area where we as a board really couldn't even come to a solid agreement as to what we thought was best. And so this is where we want to throw this out there to you all as our council to see what your thoughts are. There's some concerns about some undue outside influence on our elections by donating, campaign contributions, I guess. And so we propose 3 different options to consider. Option 1 limits donations to citizens only with no business or corporation donations. Option 2 allows for any individual to donate regardless of their citizenship status, but does not allow any business or corporation to donate to a campaign. Option 3 is sort of a blend, I suppose, between those two. Option 3 allows for individuals and businesses to donate to a campaign, but 51% of the total contributions must come from citizens or from businesses or corporations that are majority owned by Muskogee citizens. We feel like that this will ensure that the candidates are indeed supported in whole by our citizens or majority by our citizens with any one of these or options 1 and 3 rather. So are there any thoughts or feedback on those 3 options? Concerns?
Council, any discussion on the 3 options?
Speaker?
Yes, sir.
I don't have any concerns or anything. My question is, why did those 3 options come up? What is there something in the past that's happened that made these made these concerns happen?
From my experience with the discussion that we had, it was more about who is giving to candidates, who is influencing our elections. And this is, certainly money supports a campaign. I have my own personal beliefs that I will refrain from sharing because that's not, my role necessarily as a board member. But I will invite the other board members to who've been involved in previous elections, as this is my first election. I've never seen a campaign finance report, so I don't know how many of these were donations and what the ratio of previous donations to campaigns, how that was reflected in terms of citizens, non-citizens, businesses, corporations. But I think, it's important to consider the relationships an individual may have with these areas that other perfectly, I think, viable candidates and qualified candidates may have. And we didn't want to, tip those scales just because of access to funds necessarily through those larger, corporations or individuals, perhaps who have more wealth than others from, some of the rural communities, as was mentioned in an earlier comment, where they may not have as much expendable funds as others.
Thank you. Yeah, I understand that. I was just kind of wondering why those three pieces come up in the change there. So that's all I got. Thank you.
I think we settled on these three options as a board because we all felt differently about whether or not a business should be able to donate and whether or not any money should come from a non-citizen. And so those were all conversations that we had.
Great.
Speaker,
Yes, Representative Harjo.
when I look at these pieces and think about them, the thing that comes to my mind is that the further the nation gets along in business and the more that we begin to work as in partnership with other entities outside of the tribe, such as, talking with Tulsa City Council or any other entities, well then I think this right here will help safeguard some of this should they decide to try to influence through the election any particular, representative or, however it may be set up. And so I think that's good that this is out here, but now we got to look at, the three individual pieces in order to, decide which one would be better for us or better suited for us. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Mado.
Speaker.
Yes, Representative Randolph.
Thank you, Speaker. I like option number one because I believe it stresses our sovereignty. I believe it strengthens it. I think it should be voting from within our nation. I like that idea, and I believe it promotes sovereignty. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Very well. Well said. Any other comments, questions, representatives? All right, Ms. Sarah, please continue.
All right. If anybody wants to use that chat feature, I'd welcome them to submit their preference in terms of the option. It'll give us a better idea of sort of where you stand as we move forward with these recommendations. The proposed amended language for the rest of this subsection, we propose using January 1 as the beginning date for accepting campaign contributions. Since we are made the proposed change to reduce that declaration of candidacy, not to any social media announcement, but rather to filing with the election board. We know if you waited till that time to fundraise, you would not be very successful in that fundraising effort. Most likely, it wouldn't give you much time to get your materials and get them out there and secure those votes you need to win. And so we settled on that calendar year of the election year, January 1, as the time when you could begin as candidates to accept campaign contributions. And what would happen is you're not required to report that until you officially declare your candidacy. That next month you would report. So that first report would include any donations received after January 1 of that election year. So while you'd still be tracking it, you don't actually have to report it to us till you tell us that you are a candidate and putting your name in the hat and pay that fee, of course. So item C here, that highlighted portion may change according to what you all determine is the best route for the Muskogee Nation in terms of where those campaign contributions can come from. So that's why we highlighted that there. And then item D is moved to item E here in these proposed languages, or proposed amendments. So it's still there. We just moved it to the next subsection rather. Let's see, the campaign finance report is detailed here as to what that will include. I don't think we made any changes other than to the citizenship requirement or enrollment number if the donation was received by a Muskogee Nation citizen. And I think that that may help us in determining where the campaign contributions are coming from if you should decide to include non-citizens as acceptable donors to a campaign. We added a little bit more detail as to what should be reported and how, and then how we reorganized again some of the sections to where it flowed a little bit better from item to item. So no other language was modified there. Failure to file reports or inaccurate reports. We did add that if we found that a candidate did not file their campaign finance report as required 5 days after the last day of the preceding month, that we would notify such candidate by email, as this is a very tight turnaround in terms of scheduling the hearing or in the candidate responding to our notice. And so email is the easiest way, fastest way to get that message to an individual. And so that is the language we are proposing for this section. Next section, was there a question? 106, again, changes that campaign disclosure statement to campaign finance report. I believe that's all that's in there. 107. Places the responsibility of on the candidate to ask for clarification regarding the validity of an expense. Current language allows for campaign contributions to be used for any necessary expense. We believe that may be interpreted in many different ways, and so we want to just ensure that everybody's on the same page as to what that would be, and that the candidates know that they can always reach out to the election board for clarification prior to filing their report, and including, expenses such as gas in your vehicle to attend, a fundraiser or to do some outreach, whatever that might be. We want to know that it's not gas to go back and forth to work, but gas to actually attend, one of those campaign related events. The last change is under the contribution that aren't used, that these need to be placed in an interest-bearing account. And we do propose that we remove section B2, which it is a donation. Any excess funds would be donated to the College of Muskogee Nation in lieu of contributing those to the election board. That would be used for election related expenses. I'm assuming that this language was introduced at the start and creation of the College of Muskogee Nation. I could be wrong. And we don't have anything against the College of Muskogee Nation. I hope to work there one day, honestly. But we do want to ensure that we have enough funding to cover the cost of elections, particularly those unexpected expenses like additional lawyer fees, court costs, and, any of those things, when the elections are extended, those unexpected expenses that we really can't predict. We need to be sure that we have some funding in place to cover those. And from what I understand in the past, there haven't been any excess contributions made to the election board itself under option 1. And I am unsure about funds that have been donated to College of Muskogee Nation under this title.
Great.
And that is it.
Outstanding. Well, Sarah, thank you so much. Representatives, do we have any questions, concerns, comments? Sarah, I would ask, is it possible I could get a copy of these? I know in our previous discussion, we did have a discussion on, would we need a full working session on this with our tribal council and the election board? Council representatives, would you be interested in having our own work session over this with the election board for any questions that may arise, as Sarah did her description of all the changes? What are your thoughts?
Speaker?
Yes, sir.
As for myself, yes, I would like that, because this is quite a bit of information to go over within the last 14 minutes we've been on here with her. So,
Okay. Yes, sir.
it would be great to have that. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Any other comments, representatives?
Speaker, this
Yes.
is Joyce.
Yes, ma'am.
I agree with Representative Hicks. I
Great.
would be interested in the work session. Thank you.
Sir. Yes, ma'am.
This is Sandra Golden.
Yes, ma'am.
I was just going to say that I'm not very techno savvy, so when she had the PowerPoint, I could only see about half of the proposed changes. I couldn't see all of it. So
Okay.
or I would just ask, I'd like the work session, yes, and a copy of the PowerPoint because I couldn't see it.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Good deal. We'll get that copy and distribute it to everyone before we have our work session. So I'm under the impression everyone agrees to do a work session. So between the council election board, we'll choose that date and go from there. But Sarah, thank you so much. We greatly appreciate what you and the
Hey,
board
Speaker?
do. Yes.
Can I ask a question to Sarah before she gets off?
Yeah, Second Chief. Yes, sir.
But Sarah, hey, just real quick, I might have missed it, but under campaign contributions, does that also count as for, let's say somebody buys your campaign signs or somebody pays for your a campaign fee, or somebody pays for food for a campaign rally or whatever it may be, those also count as a contribution, correct?
Yes, those are considered, like, I believe, an in-kind donation. And so you would report the value of such contributions in the report.
All right, I was just being clear. But
Sure.
Thank you, Second Chief. All right. Any other comments, questions, concerns before we're done with the election board section and other business? Last call.
Yeah,
Anybody?
Speaker?
Yes.
Yes, this
Yes,
is Salina Dornan. I just
Yes, ma'am.
wanted to say hello to everyone and also to thank Sarah. She did a wonderful job with the presentation. And also, I just wanted to see if there was any last words maybe that our manager might want to add.
Yes, certainly. Nelson, are you on, sir? You may be on mute if you're on.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, and I know that we are looking forward to the work session, and Sarah will keep us informed as to when that will be.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Okay, sorry. I was trying to get to my star six here to unmute myself. Apologize about that. But no, the board pretty much, they spoke for themselves. I'm in support of whatever directions that they want to go in and want to present to you guys, and I'll just leave it at that.
Outstanding. Thank you, sir. Ms. Dornan, thank you so much for the comments. We greatly appreciate you. I would open the floor to any other election board members. Would you like to say something before we move on from other business? Any other board member going once? Sold. All right. Well, thank you all so much. That concludes our section for the election board and other business. Council representatives, do we have any other business in tonight's planning session? Hearing none. On to announcements. Are there any announcements, representatives? I will say that in our pre-agenda, we will have the Light Horse Commission discussion right after we do our planning session. So we will have extra time to visit with them after our 2 interviews. So we will do our 2 interviews and then we will go into the Light Horse Commission discussion. So that way if we need extra time, we can take it. If not, we'll have a quick discussion. So I wanted to announce that. Any other announcements? Hearing none, on to adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Representative Nelson Harjo Sr. makes a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Seconded by Representative Leonard Gouge. No discussion, voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Hearing none opposed, I would like to ask Representative Charles McHenry to say our benediction, which will serve as our adjournment.
Our most gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, we praise your holy name. Just giving thanks, Father, for this time and opportunity that we had once again to be able to serve our nation, Father. Lord, we know that the discussions and the decisions that will be made, Father, this coming Saturday, we ask for your blessing. We ask for your guidance. We ask for your direction. Father, we just thank you for your favor and for your increase, Father. And we ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Mado, Representative McHenry, we are adjourned at 6:52 p.m. Everyone stay warm. Mado.